You never even thought that you could see the beyond. So think about how many people are in church, right? They're still trying to confirm whether spirits or God even exists. They're just over there in this believing thing, right? But they haven't been able to confirm it, so their faith is weak. Versus some dude that has already gone with the toad or gone with the diamond, or even gone with a little bit of LSD, has already come into the realization that clearly more is going on. So they're technically still above the Christian who hasn't even realized what exactly is happening in their blind faith, right? So this is all I'm saying is that this wasn't for the faint-hearted anyway. It wasn't for the person who was scared. It wasn't for the person who wasn't steadfast. It wasn't for the person who didn't have discernment. And this is why it also, like, every time you come into one of those, you're almost like checking millions of people off the list. And, you know, and then pretty much you get down to this 0.1%. And then what their job and duty is to basically reboot everybody. Because the only thing that they've been able to accomplish is technically what we call killing the other being, the other you in your dream, right? And so I think only Don Juan was the one that talked about this. But it's basically that every time you see yourself inside the dream world in another bullshit reality, it's a fractured part of you. And if you were lucid, you can actually remove that being and that entire reality. And when you do that, you give more power to yourself here. And so many masters have already basically killed all their selves. Like every realm they've been replicated in, they've removed themselves from those matrices. And now they're in prime. So basically all of themselves are now encapsulated in that one body. They're no longer divided amongst and scattered across multiple realms. So their level of power and ability is at a whole different stage. And that's what we were calling the masters of the waveform. So all of these things, as I said before, are available. And that's why I was saying that, hey, you know, we have this opportunity and this ability to go into higher reaches, but we also have this ability to go into total darkness and ignorance, if you may, but not saying that darkness is the bad one, if you get my drift. And so at the end of the day, I'm just like, I can only do my term here, because that's another thing, is that I was like, in coming into this knowledge, that I'm ready to leave and I'm ready to move on, and that people are stupid and Earth's never going to get it. And, you know, I was even seeing people as negative because they were always doing negative things to me, or things that I felt were hurting the Earth and the planet. And I took a lot of that personal until I started realizing more about what's actually really happening here. And that the only damage that most people are really doing is to their DNA and to themselves, and they pass it to their kids. And this is, he's the god of writing in the halls of Amenti, or in that corridor. And this is why they're just trying to hide everything, because there is a library down there, and there's a halls of Amenti, and there is a portal there, because the inverted part of the pyramid, right? Because it's like this on top and then like this on the bottom. So that bottom point is 0 point. This would be technically what would be that gap. And that's what I said, the median, or the 0 point area, the gap in the spark plug, is really where you want to be. So the pyramid creates that within the geometry. It actually focuses everything down to that point. And then the Sphinx comes right there, and then the Amenti is there. So from my understanding, the Illuminati, as we know them now, are in that area. They got that, right? They've got control of the spaceport, if you may. And in there is a halls of Amenti. Now, I've heard that the lion, of course, as I showed in that the design was, this dog kills. You see what I mean? So they do this a lot. They betray each other. They double cross each other. It's like the way for them. And that's also even when in the male side of the reptilian stuff, that's how they do. They test their mettle in war. So they fight each other. And you see this one in the animal, right? That's why I say it's not, you can observe this in nature. And they will, the way they act. And that's the thing for them. It's kind of like when you watch animals and they're playing so rough and you're like, damn, but for them, it's playing.
Right.
You know what I mean? For you, it's sudden death. And you got to realize kind of like what level you're on versus, you know, where they're kind of at in their mentality. And I think that that's another issue that we have, is we expect everything to think the same way that we do. And that's just not the case. You might as well take your advanced thinking and keep advancing with it. Yeah.
you know, Sevan, you talked about reorienting. I hope I'm saying that word right, ourselves, and your show that you did on your channel with the great mother. and us looking at up as being down, down as being up, in as being out, just changing the way we perceive everything that we've been taught. In,
Yes.
in terms of us reorienting ourselves, should we also, when we analyze humanity and we analyze all these gods that we see in all these biblical books, should we also look at humanity being more godlike than the gods, and the gods being more human than humanity?
How this really is all of it is inside of us. So the thing about these holographic, as they call it, holographic realities, is that it can throw you, because not only they're very paradoxical, but a lot of times there's the same thing taking place in multiple instances. And so in this case, it's more of us. I never found, because all of this theism is going on in the body for sure. Like, I can guarantee you that the purest form of this knowledge is happening inside you. So unless, you have great guides, which we did, and we have some even now today, right? It is very difficult to go outside and find the truth. A lot of times you will find everything but the truth trying to go outside yourself. There's literally something that in the initiation, it wants you to figure this out yourself first. And I think this happens because it doesn't want if you're guided, it doesn't want other entities trying to fool you with taking credit for this enlightenment that has been caused, which happens a lot in church. Because if you say anything for 3 hours, you're going to catch the Holy Ghost. More importantly, hallelujah or something like that, you're going to find that you're going to become possessed with whatever is behind that word, because you're just changing the vibration of your whole field, which takes hours because of how dense a person can be. But you're changing the whole vibratory field to that field. And so it's like knocking on a door consistently, and then eventually something just opens up the door, and then now you're there with it. So in this tense, it's definitely, I kind of lost my train of thought there, but I'm basically just saying in a nutshell that we have to realize that wow, what was the question? Wow. I guess it is really getting late. Dang, they just, I tried to catch it. It was gone like a dream. It was like,
I was asking about reorienting ourselves and looking at the gods as being more human and humans being more God.
Basically, thank you. So what I was saying is that never did I find in any of this occult knowledge that it wasn't happening within, and that the highest levels of initiation that you could reach was contacting all of these family members, beings, forces, etc., inside of yourself. And then realizing actually that all of this is really about how the chakras are positioned, and also what that chakra's specific job is. Because remember, all the chakras got different jobs. The heart is not the spleen is not the kidney is not, but all of them are in agreement, and then they're terminated into the 5. These are known as 5 gods. Even when you get like super third eye open, you look at them and you see faces on the tips of your hands right here. And they have mouths right here where your vortex is. So right where that swirl is, you'll see there's a mouth, there's mouths there, right? Because we command from the 5. This is the hammer. This is the hand. This is what man is. Man means the hand in the ancient culture, right? Because the hand is kind of like, the hand is deep, right? Because it's doing pretty much a lot. It's doing everything, right? There's people who operate without hands, though. But let's just say this is the big part of who we are. But then we got all these other beings, right? The livers, the kidneys, the spleens, ears. All these are entities, right? So when we're looking at the star, we're actually looking at all those millions of different parts and pieces and all that. And some of them are fixed stars. Some of them are big stars. Some of them are suns. And all that is all positioned within the body. And then where you're at is you're like the king of or queen of the universe, right? But your own. So the moment that you go and try to exercise your power over the external realm, you could be thwarted. You could be diminished, because now you literally have to go and compete with the controllers of the external realities. Versus if you go inside, nobody is really impeding you from kicking the front door open of your own consciousness and throwing the whisperer, or the jackal, or the dweller, or whatever you want to call him today, off your throne, and then seating yourself back into your your consciousness, which is, you know, like a dragon master. Like some of this is like, you know, when they Bruce Lee, they were calling the master dragon. You know, you got samurai, and Sam begins with, you know, the samurai, and that's they're warlike, but they have nobility, right? So this comes from like also that the reptilian clans, if you may, there are many of them that operate in honor. And also you can't confuse, and I talked about this before, but you can't confuse a viper for a python, for a boa constrictor. You see what I mean? These are different kind of snakes. And the main thing that I'm bringing up here is that a lot of times, again, we classify, and that's why spirituality is a classification of all the spirits, to let you see what is the difference between spirits. So there is a classification of them. And in this way, you know, you have certain entities that are way more noble, and they also are practicing knowledge and aesthetic themselves. And then you have complete nightmares, right? And everything in between. So that's also like why a person is generally taken through a process of understanding how they need to be prepared for this. And the only way that you're getting prepared for this introduction to the other aspects of self is generally through inside and an internal initiation, because a lot of times these beings need to be contained within the dream space. Seeing them in physical realities, it's too much for even the physical consciousness to even be able to withstand. Right. But in the dream space, if you notice, you even are equipped to do things beyond the nightmares. Sometimes you get in a dream and you just got all these powers and abilities, and it's like you even know how to do this. And you can deal with or absorb or go through an experience with certain life forms or whatever, and then come out unscathed and then have the knowledge. So this is the purpose of these dream worlds, and actually understanding how all this stuff is taking place within. Like I also see in many ways, like when I'm telling these stories, I do see segments of me in life, this life, thinking certain ways, certain people I knew, these kind of things. And then so I asked myself, well, why do you have so many resonances? Like you asked me the other day about Sevan, remember? And I was like, it was funny because it kind of caught me in this weird question. I was like, but at the end of the day, what I start seeing is that every life, it's like you're kind of being presented with the same decisions again. And each life, you're kind of given more power or less, because that's when you go down, you're restricted more. Right. Like you actually like come under dominion more. That's why the poorer you get, the more people can control you, right? Like the richer or the more sovereign you become, the more power you have, right? So this is like that maintenance that, you know, you got to do on yourself to make sure that you're actually climbing the ladder and not electing other gods, or as it's even mentioned in the Bible, wandering after strange gods. This means setting up like all these strange characters that are supposedly your God and your master, when you were already told, hey, all of it is really happening in here. And the only reason why we use outside, like the reason why we use that, is when we're like cross-referencing or checking things that are not easy to discover within, right? Yeah.
So you mentioned you keep talking about us looking outside versus looking inside. I have a question about meditation. When we meditate, we often put up pictures of ancestors, gods, deities, things of that nature. It may be an animal, you know, depending on what culture you were incarnated down here in. How effective would it be, Sevan, if I'm meditating, I'm meditating, and I put up a picture, Sevan, of Brother Rich while I'm meditating? Why? Because this is the avatar that contains everything that I hope to tap into. My ancestors, my mother, my grandmother, my higher self, God, my collective, everything is contained within this avatar. So how effective if I'm looking at myself while I'm meditating as in a picture, Sevan?
I mean, I'm a big fan of self-worship. I actually have gone a little bit more deeper. What I did is I put myself or image of myself into what I call a God box. What a God box is basically where the inside the box is only mirrors. And then when you basically can see yourself across all dimensions, like as far as you can look, you could keep seeing yourself. They call it like an infinity mirror, right?
Yeah.
And also, there's several things that I've created personally that have been able to drive energy back into me. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
One of the, okay, wow, you on something right here. Okay, I'm gonna give it to you, right? You ready for it?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
What I noticed was, and we have this feature inside of Dream Engine where you can put the face of yourself on another character. You may seen, like, you generate the body, then you put your face on it, right?
Right.
You've seen some of my pictures like that. I found that was like a whole different level. Because, and I realized how it was happening, because you know me, I got to break it down. But what happens is when people see you, they see you in a certain light.
Yeah.
Okay. Even when you see yourself in the mirror, you see yourself in a certain light.
Yeah.
And when you change up your appearance or your regalia, you feel that way. It's like you dressing up in, you know, whatever you call it, like you're down, you know, the tuxedos or whatever it is, your dashiki or whatever, where you know, okay, it's prom night, basically. Yeah. And then you kind of see yourself in that light, right? So imagine having all these images that was you depicted in this higher light. What I believe happens is not only when people see those images, they start projecting, I can prove this is real. They start projecting like, oh, that's him. And they lose that idea of the lowly version of you that they're so familiar with. Yeah. And they install this new projection in their mind. So every time they see you as that and not as like this normal person, right?
Right.
Another thing that I wanted to mention earlier, and I was going to forget, but like, for instance, this is one of the devices that I created. It's called the Cosmic Watch, right?
Oh, that looks powerful. What's that?
So in this device, first of all, it has the manumission, right? So in language, what you'll notice is that on all the wrists of all of the sky gods and the gods of the deep, they always have something that looks like a watch. And if you look real closely, this symbol is on the watch because this is the solar symbol. And then the solar symbol is then paired with, and down the side is written in Sumerian, the first time being free was ever written, which is called the Amagi. Mm-hmm. And the Amagi in Sumerian means, one second. I see there's a window just popped up out of nowhere. So the Amagi in Sumerian means literally to go back within your mother. You can Google it on Wikipedia. And what this means is that the only time, because they basically found out that the reason why many beings were being held on the planet was because they were in debt. Most of them were in debt to spirits, because remember that started happening. And so the manumission was created because they knew that the only time you can truly be free of debt was to go back into your mother's womb, because there was no debt there. Okay. And then also underneath this is metamaterial. So I started finding out that these languages do break down into shapes. We call them cymatics. But even deeper than that, certain cymatics exude properties. That's what metamaterial is. It's like something that has a property that is very strange. Meta always means almost at the border of even being explained. And in this case, we found a shape that was a perfect harmonic. And I always speak in the collective, even though this would be me going in. But I found a shape that basically matched the perfect harmonic. And the reason is I know because metals that generally tarnish fast, like copper, don't tarnish at all with this pattern. Mm-hmm. And it was something I discovered over time. It was like coming back to a drawer of all these cymatics and then noticing that one wasn't rusted. Then back engineering exactly what the design was and figuring out that it's sitting right in the middle of the harmonic, like perfectly tuned, and then like completely going in and creating something that can keep reverberating that. And that's when this was actually created. So this, and it's also this bezel around it is, this one is wanga wood, but it's generally milled in red heart wood, right? So these are very these woods resonate. And then, of course, this is held by, this is magnetic, right? So it straps on there. And then there's a North Pole side here. So everything that is coming through the energy of this is going right into the body. Okay? So what I'm talking about is just to allow that to be a part of the question here is that we're talking about resonances, right? Because you say, hey, if I put this of myself, all of that is based on resonances. And the more powerful resonances, which words used to be powerful resonances, but the more powerful resonances that you have, the more it adds energy to your energetic field. And that always has to come with the disclaimer of grounding,
Right.
because ground is amplification. And then lastly, like you see this is the vector equilibrium. This was the last of the design of these go together, basically, or they could be separate. But this right here was seeing in the reality that you constantly get these imbalances in any space that you go into. I felt like that we needed like a shield, you know what I mean, when you're going into certain places. And so this design was designed to do that. So what this is this is called the cuboctahedron. And first, on the top of it, it contains a metamaterial pattern which charges what's inside. This material is also doped. It's basically a doped material, and this means that it's actually conductive, right? And then inside actually lies the resonator. So each box is set in an array, so it has a serial number here that basically allows us to understand where this unit actually is in the array. And then the main component is this inside. And what this is the magnetic field is perfectly balanced. And it also contains precious metals, if you may. There's titanium, and this was titanium, cobalt. There's iron, zinc, copper, and bismuth, which is a non-attractive magnet, right? And this device is basically just held in the hand. And you'll notice that, like, when you're doing anything, that you start feeling like a web. You'll notice that when you start building up your energy field, the first feeling is like a web. It almost feels like a web on your face. And what that is that same field I showed with the torus, it pushes out from your body. It's actually supposed to extend quite far from your body when your Merkaba, quote unquote, is completely activated. But in this case, this harmonizes and stimulates the field. So it's more of like something that when you're thinking or when you're talking, you know, you use this to basically maintain the field that's around you, right? So this is what I call spiritual technologies, right? And no telling what kind of flack I would get if, you know, I start, because they're like, oh my goodness, Sevan's already do, you know. But at the end of the day, like, what I will do is I will, me too, I will basically take all of the knowledge, because for me, I started getting to this point, especially after like my 8th year, and I was like getting all this knowledge that was about like the beyond. And I started asking myself how much of this knowledge I was able to apply in the physical reality. And I told myself that I needed to start basically making my consciousness, higher self or whatever, give me knowledge about things that were going to assist me in this reality. Because it seemed like it always loved to go into like the other planets and stuff. And don't get me wrong, I love the knowledge and everything, but I will often find when I will wake up that there would be nothing that I could actually come into the reality and help myself with specifically. And when I asked about that, I was told because that's how I was focusing my energy. So I started focusing my energy on getting knowledge about higher things that could be applied in the reality right now.